Hey guys, Into the Stars, good morning. And so we all know the story of Tesla living on the 33rd floor of the Wyndham New Yorker Hotel when he died, right? And so here's some images from that time period in history. The electric revolution, the age of electricity, some people call it. There are all different kinds of names for the period in history when all of this went down, just after the presidency of Abraham Lincoln. And there's Tesla's room number on the 33rd floor, 3327. He actually had two rooms side by side. We also know that this building was a power plant, and we have an extensive documentary documenting the weird oddities that were going on inside this building. It was a wonder of the world, comparable to like Hoover Dam. And basically, it was all wired up. There was wires going in and out of all of the rooms. And I'm starting to wonder what this New Yorker, the Wyndham New Yorker, was really all about. And this is where Tesla died. Now, we also did some research into the fact that Tesla was going back and forth to Long Island, to the early beginnings of the Brookhaven National Laboratory, in that they were looking at lasers, shooting lasers, and dealing with energy, as well as radar, early radar, which would then now has evolved into millimeter waves, right? Which is this 5G WIS network. So basically, John Trump and Tesla were probably working together. Trump was also at Brookhaven in the early beginnings of the laboratory there. And Tesla's tower that he was working on is on Long Island, just a few miles from Brookhaven National Laboratories. So there's something going on here. We also know that the Wyndham New Yorker is very close to where a couple of towers once stood in. We're going to start calling it Lamhattan. Now, my theory all along was that Tesla tech was used to change the skyline of New York, and that Trump's uncle had something to do with it. My point here is that John Trump just didn't show up out of nowhere to collect Tesla's research. The two men were already, most likely, working together and knew each other. They were both premier electrical engineers during this age of electricity. Now, we're going to go into Google Earth in this show, and I'm going to show you all of these buildings, the proximity to one another. We're going to start with the Wyndham New Yorker, and I also put a link to the documentary that we did on the Wyndham New Yorker in the pinned comment. We did that a couple years ago. If you want to find out more about the building and what Tesla was doing inside during the last hours of his life. It had a huge engine or machine down in the basement. And like I said, it was a self-contained power plant. So let's take a look at this. Google Earth pulled up here. This is the Wyndham New Yorker, the building where Tesla died. And this is crazy because if you look at the floor plan of this, and you'll see this in the documentary if you decide to watch it, the floor plan of this actually shows basically what appears to be an electric engine, one of the early models of the electric engine, which match up with some of Tesla's first inventions. So it was almost as if the building was built around Tesla, so to speak. Now, of course, this must have been a secret program because none of this is public knowledge, but when you look at the actual floor plan of the building, here, let's do that real quick so you can get an idea of what I'm talking about. Tesla's New Yorker 33rd floor plan. Let's put plan in there and see what that brings us. And I'll show you some of Tesla's early inventions. And we'll compare that to the floor plan of the Wyndham New Yorker. Let's just do this. Wyndham New Yorker floor plan. And what it looks like is two E's, which of course stands for electrical engineer as well, right? And also you could look at this as a mirrored 33, okay, which he was on the 33rd floor, right? So here is one of the floors in the Wyndham New Yorker. And then if you look at, now remember that image. Well, if you look at some of Tesla's designs, let's put Inventions. You'll see that some of these actually look a lot like the inverted 33. One of them is like a motor. But anyway, I documented all of this. We're not going to belabor this point too much. It's in the documentary, and you'll be able to see it for yourself. The comparison of the building's actual floor plan kind of linking up with Tesla's inventions. The only logical explanation for that would be that they built the building around Tesla's design or whatever. Now, I believe that the building was actually opened or built in 1933, I think, if I can remember correctly. But again, go to the documentary. It's all well documented there. So let's go back into Google Earth here. So this, of course, is the New Yorker. Now, this is interesting because this was built very close to a train station. And basically, soldiers coming from conflicts overseas were able to stay here for free, which was a huge upgrade of the time. They didn't treat soldiers like that back then. So that was kind of weird. Like they just had free dibs on this building here, right? So my guess is there were some kind of experiments possibly going on. Now let's back this out. So I want to show you the proximity of where all this sits. Turn off 3D buildings here so we can do this effectively without crashing. So this is the rest of Lower Lambhattan, and here's down here where it all went down with the towers, right? YouTube is getting so crazy now. But you guys are smart people, so I don't have to go into detail about what we're saying. You guys are picking up what I'm putting down. Now, let's see how close all of this is in proximity to the copper buildings of Lower Manhattan that we're going to get into later in the show, as well as a strange alignment of copper buildings and Trump towers. This is Long Island here. And as you see just miles away, this is the Tesla Tower. It's like a science research center. And it is very, very close to Brookhaven National Laboratories. To say the two aren't connected, or there's not something special about the place, is just simply being insincere. Wow, is that a Tesla plant too? Let's take a look here. What is that? Oh, it's just a car center. All right. And then there's, of course, the Tesla Museum. Wow, they got a pretty big plant there. I didn't know that before we did the show. Let's go to Brookhaven National Laboratories and show you how close this Tesla Museum is, where he built his tower. Remember the Tesla Tower? So here's Brookhaven National Laboratories. Here's their collider, smashing particles. And they were doing all kinds of research. They were smashing gold particles. They were smashing copper particles. And just up here is Tesla. Thought I had this marked. It won't even show up when you search it, but it's really literally just in this area here. Shoreham. Tesla's Shoreham. I think this is it right here. There it is. It's called the Tesla Science Center, and on this property is where he built his iconic tower. So all this is connected, even though when you read the history books, you don't see any connection to Brookhaven, and Tesla, until I show it to you like this. And you see how close this is to the collider here, to this ring. These people are the new Lord of the Rings. They're trying to open up portals, just like in Stargate, through the center of the ring. They're trying to open up an event horizon. Basically, look at this as a ring from the Stargate series, but it's laying on the ground. And by spinning these particles around it at the speed of light, they can try to go through portals into pits, the bottomless pit, and all these things. So, now that you've got a good feel for the proximity of all these things, let's talk a little bit more about copper and how this particular element was used almost exclusively in the infancy of the electronic age. In fact, there was a telegraph cable that was pure copper, and basically that particular cable was 7 cables wrapped in one and went all the way across the Atlantic Ocean in 1858 when Lincoln was still president. It was a telegraph cable. And from then on, copper became the mainstay. It was one of the main conductors of electricity during the age of electricity. Now, there's some interesting things about copper. The amount of copper in use in the world is increasing, and the quantity that's available is barely sufficient to allow all countries to reach developed world levels of usage. In fact, an estimated 80% of all copper ever mined is still in use today. So what does that mean? Well, in layman's terms, that means copper is pretty rare. And that means that it's so rare that most of it gets recycled. Everything pulled out of the ground gets reused. So I began to think about this and how this would relate to copper coins. And I began to think about the first year, 1982, when copper was drastically reduced in pennies. Pennies went from almost 100% copper down to 2.5% copper. And I began to think about why they would reduce the amount of copper in pennies. And I think it's because pennies often get thrown away and lost and never recycled. Let that sink in for a second. All the other coins get collected and put back in circulation. Well, did you know that all the other coins are anywhere between 75 to 90% copper? And almost none of those get lost or thrown away. Quarters, dimes, and nickels are 75 to 90% copper. And I began to just use critical thinking and go, okay, obviously they don't like that copper pennies were getting thrown away. So the first thing they did was take all the copper out of the pennies so that they're not really worth anything. And then I thought, what if copper in coins was a secret way to stockpile copper into the circulation system of money until it was needed later? It's really the perfect way to do it, because you're basically circulating value in plain sight. But what would they be putting this copper into circulation for? I believe it was 5G whiz technology. They knew back in 1982 they were going to need the copper, and they didn't want to waste any of it on pennies that were getting thrown in the street or down sewers, never to be seen again and never to be recycled again. All the government has to do is collect the coins back out of circulation when they enter the banks, and they would have all the copper that they need for the 5G whiz infrastructure. Kind of like the copper blood of the serpent circulating through the veins of America and the economy until it can be converted into the machine. And let that sink in for a second. And they don't care so much about pennies anymore because they don't have any copper left in them. They're not really worth anything. And everything pre-1982, if they had any copper from those pennies, they'd be so rare that if you did find one, they would become like a relic or a collectible. And with a very, very high value, but not too much of those really still hanging around. Now, we're going to switch gears here because there's another aspect to copper that I want to talk about, and that is the conductivity of electricity. So what I did is I plotted all of the copper top buildings in Manhattan, and there aren't very many. It's actually kind of rare. And I began to see that they formed some kind of a pattern. And I began to wonder, are these copper top buildings really conductors of some type? There was a lot of copper at the basement of the Wyndham New Yorker where Tesla was, and you'll see that in the documentary. We go down into this room that connected to the train system, and it was lined with copper. And I want you to now look at this strange alignment that I found between two Trump buildings. One was made, actually two of them were made with a copper roof. One was on 40 Wall Street. We're going to look at that, which is right here. But let's start with the alignment back here at Trump's Plaza, down here, or up here, in New Rochelle. Got to go all the way back here. Now, what's going on with this? Well, I'm not really sure. But it starts back here with Trump Plaza. Let's zoom in on this. This is New Rochelle. Remember, this was the first place they tried the quarantine. Remember how viciously we were attacked? For calling this out, I drove through the quarantine zone. Remember all that? Well, this is it right here. Trump opened Trump Plaza in New Rochelle. Let's turn 3D on and take a look at this building. And some of you with eyes to see are already seeing how this building looks a little bit like the Wyndham New Yorker in its design, its stair-stepping design, which is just kind of weird. I mean, it's not exact, but doesn't that look a lot like the Tesla's Wyndham New Yorker where he passed away? It does to me. Maybe a more modern version of it, but it does. Now, here's the creepy thing. This forms an alignment from the cornerstone of Trump Plaza in New Rochelle, then to these copper buildings. Let's follow the line here. Now, these next buildings we're going to look at are very famous because they're called the Copper Buildings, and they're well known in New York. Go across the landscape here. And it's weird because this alignment goes right through the corner of these copper buildings. Pull them up here. Went too fast. Gotta let that catch up. Okay. Now, these copper buildings are weird because they're like bent. They're bent building, but they are indeed clad in copper. And they're actually famous for being clad in copper. So remember, cornerstone to cornerstone. And you can't just line two things up. You got to have three things at least to make an alignment, because you can draw a straight line between any two objects. But when you have three line up, that's something different. So here are the copper buildings here. They're bent buildings. I'm going to turn on 3D so you guys can see this. And these are the twin copper buildings. Let's let this load up. You can see them right here. I labeled them copper 7. Now, they don't look copper, but you can read that these are in fact copper buildings. Now, what is the third alignment? That would go to Trump's copper top 40 Wall Street building. So what do we have here in total? We have 2 copper buildings, one belonging to Trump and New Rochelle. Let's back this out so I can show you the third part of this alignment. I don't know why the 3D version didn't pop up for those, but you can look those up for yourself. And here we go over to Trump's Wall Street, forming the last in the series. I know this one has a 3D image. Pull this up. Now, we just decoded Trump's 40 Wall Street address in this copper top building and what it probably means. We found an episode of Person of Interest in which they filmed, actually the only documented filming inside of this building. They go into a bank vault. If you haven't seen that video yet, you might want to check it out. But this is Trump's building. It's his most profitable building. This makes him a lot of money. Someone came on the channel and left a comment and said, Trump's lost half of his wealth trying to be president. Give me a break. Go on and look at Trump's his holdings, his real estate holdings. He has buildings all over the world. If he was really hurting financially, he'd start selling off all his buildings. Okay? Don't cry poverty for Trump just because he doesn't get a paycheck for being president. He wipes his butt with the money that he would have gotten for his salary for president. It's literally he spends that in one day with his empire. Okay? So don't feel sorry for Trump and his financial situation. He was put there for a reason, to do exactly what he's doing. He is the copper top president. All along, this was the plan. Starting in 1982, where they pulled the copper out of the pennies. They already had the technology they knew they were going to foist upon the world. They just didn't tell you or me about it. Because it's all about control. Okay? So we got these cornerstones lining up. 2 copper buildings, 2 of Trump's buildings. Copper in the middle, the twin copper towers in the middle. That's your Janus, two-faced. That's your Gemini. Do you see how these between the 2 buildings is the truth? I always tell you the truth is in the middle somewhere. It's never on the right or the left. And this is just a spiritual manifestation of that fact. Now, that's a lot of copper in one line of sight. And as I zoom out, let's zoom this out. You'll see all of the copper surrounding Lower Lambhattan. Now, I tried to get every single copper top building in all of Manhattan Island. I tried to make sure I put a push pin on every single one. I could have missed a couple, but it's weird. There's like a little pattern here. Let me turn the 3D buildings off because it's getting loaded up here. Okay, there we go. So every push pin you see is a copper topped building. And of course, Trump's 40 Wall Street is one of those. And look at this. It's almost like it's kind of like forms a pocket in here. Of course, the Statue of Liberty is copper, so I put that here, copper 6. And look at all this. Now, I want to set the record straight. There's not just a bunch of copper top roofs all around New York. They're actually pretty rare. And Trump owns several. Let's take a look at the Plaza Hotel. This is another copper top building that Trump owns. It's right on the park here, very close to Trump Tower and the IBM Tower, of course, that we decoded. We'll break that one down a little bit further too. The Superman Tower at a certain point. We just got the queue pretty much loaded up with live shows, but we'll take another look at these twin buildings, Trump Tower and the IBM building with the Superman insignia on top. It doesn't really have that, but I put that on there because it's the same exact shape. But here is Trump's Copper Top Plaza Hotel, right on Central Park there. Now, here's the other crazy thing. Trump's working on a project at the White House. What is it? A copper-topped tennis pavilion. Let's take a look at that. I think it's, where is it? Now, Melania supposedly has been entrusted with this particular project, but basically it is a copper-topped pavilion. Oh, let's see here. This might be here. There it is. Now, it's interesting because in a lot of countries, copper piping is mandatory. Countries like France, for instance. And they say it's all because of freezing pipes and stuff. But I'm wondering if there isn't more to this, like some kind of infrastructure was set up in place that can be drawn on later, or maybe it is even transmitting some kind of electric current that feeds into Tesla's dream of pulling current out of the air. So here is the copper-topped tennis pavilion. There's Melania, of course. And in her own words, she talks about this being copper-topped in this article here. As soon as I close Google Earth, everything will move around a little bit faster, but bear with me in terms of the speed of this live show. Just don't want to crash the computer. Let's do a search on this page talking about the tennis pavilion being worked on at the White House. There you see right here, it's clad in limestone with a copper roof. Now, I'm not sure if this is complete yet, but obviously this is noteworthy. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done a story on it, right? And look, it's quote unquote copper roof. So copper is important to Trump. Now, we've shown you in previous videos that copper was originally mined in the Roman Empire on the island of Cyprus. And now Cyprus is a play on the word cuprum, which is the word for copper, but it's also, Cyprus is Cyrus, and we know that Trump has been compared to Cyrus. So Cyrus really is and was the Copper King, right? Which Trump is being compared to now. So let's close that. Now, this all brings us back full circle to Tesla. And if you had to sum up Tesla's work in one phrase, it will be this: how to harvest free energy from your surroundings. Let's go back in here. But what if in this free energy harvest, they found out that it steals life energy from living things? We all have copper in our bodies, you guys. And it's in our muscles, I believe, in a couple other places. It's necessary for your body to work correctly. And maybe that has to do with the electric impulses being sent to your muscles. And so when you think about harvesting electricity out of the environment, you can imagine that being close to copper could affect your body in some way. We're electric creatures. We're very highly conductive. So, there's another side to Tesla and his legacy that we're going to talk about next that few people really know about or want to acknowledge. And it's Marina Abramovic's family obsession with his legacy. Now, we're going to watch this video that I uploaded several years ago. And it was a live show. We're not going to watch the whole thing. But basically, it talks about this connection between Tesla and Marina Abramovic. I'm going to close up Google Earth here because I think we're done with that. I think things will run a lot smoother once we get this closed up. All right. Make sure we're connected, and then we'll head over and watch this video here that I've pulled up. All right. Put this in theater mode. Okay, there you guys are. You know, back in the day, we were never really able to open up Google Earth, but I'm glad that we got all that fixed up, so we can do those. We can do those Google Earth zoom ins and stuff, and while we're live. All right. Looks like we're good to go. We're still live. Okay, so let's pull up this live show that we did a couple years ago. Now, most people will probably say, well, Casey, Tesla's dead. Like, he can't control, you know, who does what with his work. Yeah, but I believe there was a connection during his life to the Abramovic family, and that's why her brother was entrusted with his relics and museum in Belgrade. Let's make this a little bit bigger. I think we want to start in a minute here. Subscriber. And as you can see, what you're looking at on your screen is a picture of Marina Abramovic, and this was sent to me by a subscriber. And as you can see, here she is praying over this orb. Now, this is crazy because this orb just happens to be the ashes of Nikola Tesla in the Tesla Museum. Let's read about this. Let me play a little bit more of this so you can see what's going on. Now, many people have taken note that this woman is, I think she's in her late 60s, early 70s, but yet she somehow is maintaining her youth. You have to ask yourself, what is this all about? Well, let's read about this. This was in 2004, and it says, just like Tesla electricity, one of the videos that belonged to the installation Count on Us, which would be like a display, some kind of art display, that they call it an installation in like the European translation of this page here. Abramovic 2004, the Tesla urn, and it's dedicated to the Serbian-American scientist Nikola Tesla, who made some groundbreaking inventions that are still of importance for us today, especially in the area of electric engineering. In the video, Marina Abramovic holds her hands over the urn that stores the ashes of Tesla, normally kept at Nikola Tesla Museum in Belgrade, Serbia, in an attempt to absorb their energy. So this is normally kept somewhere else, which suggests that this orb was released into her possession for a time so she could carry out this bizarre ritual. I'm going to play a little bit more of this. Now, think about what this really means. She's praying over the ashes or doing some kind of ritual with the ashes of Nikola Tesla. And apparently she was given specific permission, possibly by the Tesla estate or whoever the benefactors are of the Tesla estate, and to handle and take into possession the ashes of Nikola Tesla. This is crazy. His ashes were placed in this urn, which is a sphere. Now, I don't know if he asked for his ashes to be placed in this sphere upon his death. This could have been in his will. Maybe it wasn't. But what we do know is this was his favorite geometric shape. And Abramovic seems to be trying to harvest or summon what appears to be the dead spirit of Nikola Tesla out of his ashes. This is creepy. So we have a lot of people that fully believe Tesla was a positive and benevolent person who was trying to help humanity. But when you see aspects like this of his legacy, you have to it raises questions. Now, if this was the only thing, you can dice this up 100 ways. Like, what is she doing here? Regardless of whether or not you feel Tesla was evil or benevolent. I mean, she could be casting a spell on a righteous man. I don't know. I wasn't there. I didn't know Tesla. But here's the other aspect to this that needs to be taken into account. And this is why I even did this video, because I probably wouldn't have done this live show unless I had this additional information to help round out and get to the bottom of what this could have been all about. And that is that Marina Abramovic's brother is basically the authority on the legacy of Nikola Tesla. This is Velimir Abramovic. Now, this is translated, so you're not going to find this with a typical search. Again, this was sent to me by a subscriber. It says he's a researcher of the character and work of Nikola Tesla. He wrote a doctoral thesis in '85, The Continuity Problem in Natural Philosophy. And in '89, he was a professor of film theory at the University of Arts in Belgrade. Spent 20 years studying the system of worldwide administration. That sounds like New World Order, right? And also the well-known greatest connoisseur of character and work of Nikola Tesla. The well-known greatest connoisseur of character and work of Nikola Tesla. So this brother may have had something to do with the release of this orb into his sister's possession for a time for her to perform this ritual. One of the world's leading researchers, Nikola Tesla, and famous philosopher. So this is what puts things in perspective for me. Now, if Tesla's estate and the people that he left behind in this world didn't want his legacy tarnished, would they involve these type of people in his legacy? That's the question we need to be asking here. Now, we speculated on this channel that Tesla's ray gun and earthquake oscillator were featured in the Stranger Things TV series. And this device, this oscillator, ray gun, caused a pair of earthquakes very close to the 4th of July, 1984 in the Stranger Things series. You can see the thumbnail images around the frame of the live show. As we're watching this, you can see I put them in the frame here so that you can see comparisons to the Stranger Things screenshots and then Tesla's inventions. So the diagram like images that are in the frame here, you can see look that there are Tesla's inventions that look like the screenshots from Stranger Things. Now here's the crazy part. There's 2 Illuminati playing cards that talk about earthquakes, and one of them has a ray gun. Look at this. It almost looks like an oscillating ray gun, the same one that was in Stranger Things, and the same one that looks like images of Tesla's ray gun that he had. You can see these concentric circles here around the gun. They indicate some kind of vibrational frequency. And if you look at this seismograph, this is actually an output from a seismograph. This is the earthquake projector Illuminati playing card. Now, that was the video. I think I have this in the pinned comment as well if you want to look at the rest of this video. And it's on my other channel, on Enter the Stars Reloaded. But here's the link here, so I'll put that in there. Now, it's not just me saying that copper is basically has gone up in value and will be more important in the future to come. the mainstream news is also talking about, here's Trump's hotel. This is the Copper Top Plaza Hotel here. And in here it talks about it having a copper roof. So let's take a look at some of these other mainstream articles that talk about copper gaining value. Here's one here. Steel copper stock jumps on Trump call for infrastructure bill, which is exactly what we told you. So here's the price of copper going up, along with other metals that are going to be needed in this infrastructure push. So it's here, you guys. And there's more to this than meets the eye. I expect soon that they're basically just going to pull the plug on coinage. And it's going to coincide with the push to build the 5G Wiz infrastructure. Here's copper prices and what they've been doing over the past several years. I think this is here. Oh, this is 24-hour copper. It jumped when Trump announced his infrastructure. There's nickel, zinc, lead. So it's some of the documentation surrounding that. What's this? Oh, it's the Plaza Hotel. All right, you guys. So we'll be back on here tomorrow. I just wanted to show you some of this stuff as it relates to where everything's headed. We're definitely on the cusp of something big when it comes to how the world works. All the things that we're familiar with from the past are going to change. And you got to be ready for that change. Not to be afraid, but just understand what's happening as it's unfolding. Okay? And of course, yes, they want to go to a cashless society for other reasons as well. And probably even reasons that may be even more important than the copper. It's about control, right? But also, you have to understand that this is multifaceted. There is never just one answer or one reason for something they're doing. Usually, they can tick off several boxes on their agenda through some of these actions. All right. Yeah, that whistling was because that was an old video when I had sound problems. But you probably can't hear the whistle anymore because now I'm just talking to you. So let's go into the chat here for a little bit. So what are your guys' theories on what's up with these copper top roofs in Manhattan and how that might relate to Trump, the 5G Wiz president? Let this catch up. Brett says in 2009 it went up quite a bit, copper prices. That's interesting. Now, as YouTube begins to crack down, expect that some of the videos that you may have in your favorite watch list or something, some of those are going to probably come down, and I may take them down just to protect the channel. But always feel free to mirror anything that you see on this channel. And when I originally got this channel back, I just took a bunch of stuff down. I didn't save it, unfortunately. So some of it's gone forever. You know, some of the stuff we did on Toy Story and ADRENO, Chrome, a lot of that's gone forever. And I apologize for that, but that's why it's imperative that we just spread the word as quickly as possible when the information comes out, instead of just kind of holding it in our vest coat pocket and just feeling like we can just enjoy it for ourselves and not share the word, because some of this stuff can't be reproduced. It's gone forever. And that's to protect the channel so that we have a voice later. So I guess they're coming after channels that talk about a particular actor. So we've had to pull down a lot of that work as well. You know, it's funny. They can make fun of each other on some of their TV shows and entertainment, late night shows and comedy. They can make fun of each other and talk about each other. But if you talk about things, then all of a sudden you become a threat and they have to wipe away your opinion. And that's just really sad. It's really sad that we don't recognize that that's what's happening. Older nickels are 80% copper, depending on the year. Yes, the newer ones are like 75%. Quarters are 90%. Dimes are 90%. And obviously, all they got to do is recollect all that coinage, because people spend the money. It goes to a store, wherever you spend it. That goes to a bank, right? And then the bank just melts it down, and now they've got copper, right? It's pretty easy to do. Now, some of the Dead Sea Scrolls were written on copper cylinders, and that's another avenue that we can look into. Dead Sea Scrolls were basically a bunch of ancient scripture that they found in 1947 in these caves called the Qumran Caves. They found these scrolls, and basically they matched them up with current versions of the Bible and later discoveries of biblical scripture, and they seemed to line up pretty perfectly. So not a lot was changed and we're talking span of like thousands of years between the ages of the two discoveries. Okay. And so that means something. That means God has preserved his word, right? But here's the problem. When they found the Dead Sea Scrolls, it also included all these books that were not included in our modern Bible. So they got the translation right, or they got the, let's call it the actual letters and writing was correct and had not changed, as it was copied over and over and over again throughout the millennia. But what did change was the composition. In other words, books that were included or not included. So Book of Enoch was found. These copies were older than Christ, but yet they did not update our modern Bibles to reflect that the older writings did include the Book of Enoch. There's a lot to this rabbit hole, to this story. And these copies of the Book of Enoch that were found with the Dead Sea Scrolls that were dated back before the time of Christ, they're under lock and key. You can't see these original copies. They won't show them to you. They're in private hands. And they're not letting the people look at them. These Bible scholars and stuff, they're not able to see them. So what is it about these original books of Enoch? Is there more to the story that we don't know? Well, I guess we're all going to have to wait and see, right? All right. So there's a lot going on, and I understand what I'm hearing, the chatter that I'm hearing in the KEW community, is that all this stuff's supposed to happen in October. All the stuff that didn't happen in the first 4 years of the presidency, they're going to now say that it's all going to happen in these last few months before the election. And the sky's going to open, and JFK Jr. is going to descend out of the clouds, and all the people that we said that were supposed to be in jail are all going to be in jail. The currency's going to this is what these people are believing, you guys. It makes me so sad that our truth community has gotten to this point. And when it doesn't happen, I'm sure that they'll have another excuse. Or they'll say, oh, Biden got power, so he couldn't get it done. So, stay tuned, because we'll be all over Biden if he gets the presidency. Break him down. We're going to look at his birthday. We're going to look at everything in his life. His history. Depictions of him in film to carry out their purposes and their plan. Programming. So, all right, you guys, we're going to let you go for today. Have a great day, everyone. Take care and be safe out there. Much love.